Captain Velinara's crystalline hands shook as she looked at the broken control panels around her. The colony ship, Peaceful Dawn, was dying slowly in the cold darkness of space. Red warning lights flashed everywhere, and the gentle humming sound that always filled Zephyrian ships was getting weaker. "How long do we have?" she asked, though she already knew the answer would be terrible. Her chief engineer, Maltheo, touched his glowing forehead with worry. "Life support will last maybe 8 hours, Captain. The engines are completely dead. We can't even send out escape pods. They need the main power systems to launch. 2,000 people, 2,000 innocent lives floating helplessly in the void." Velinara thought about the families sleeping in the passenger sections, the children, who had never seen anything but peace, the elderly who had spent their lives creating beautiful art and music. None of them had ever imagined they might die like this. "Captain," her communications officer whispered, her voice full of fear, "the pirate signatures are getting stronger. My sensors show 3 large ships heading straight for us. They'll be here in 6 hours. Velinara closed her bright, luminescent eyes and felt her heart sink. The Korthok pirates were known throughout this part of the galaxy. They took peaceful people as slaves, sold them to work in terrible conditions on mining worlds. Her people had heard the stories, the screams, the suffering. "We could try hiding," Maltheo suggested weakly. "Turn off all remaining power, go completely dark. They already know we're here," the communications officer replied. "Our distress beacon was active for 2 hours before the main power failed. They've been tracking us." Velinara opened her eyes and stared out at the stars. Her people, the Zephyrians, had never built a single weapon. They didn't even have words in their language for enemy or battle. They were healers who spent their lives helping others. They were philosophers who thought deeply about the meaning of existence. They were artists who created beauty that made people cry with joy, but they were not fighters. "Send an open distress signal," she commanded, her voice barely steady. "Broadcast it on all frequencies. Tell anyone who will listen that we need help." Her communications officer's crystalline skin went pale. "But Captain, only Deathworld species patrol these dangerous sectors. The humans, the Kalarthi, the Drakmori, the stories about them are terrifying." Velinara looked at her crew, then at the passenger sections where her people slept peacefully, not knowing death was coming for them. "Then we pray the rumors about Deathworlders having honor are true." Lieutenant Jin Park was halfway through his 3rd cup of coffee when the distress signal came through the communications array. He'd been monitoring deep space frequencies for 6 hours straight, listening to nothing but static and routine cargo ship check-ins. Then suddenly, the speakers, filled with the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard. It was like music. Pure flowing tones that rose and fell like a gentle song. But underneath the beauty, Jin could hear something that made his heart race, pure terror. The universal translator on his console sparked and struggled, trying to make sense of the alien language. "Captain Wu," Jin called out, his voice echoing through the corridors of the patrol ship Iron Will. "You need to hear this. We have a distress signal coming in." Captain Minwoo was in his quarters, reading reports from Earth Command, when Jin's call came through. He dropped everything and rushed to the bridge, his boots clanging against the metal floors. The Iron Will wasn't a big ship, just 30 crew members, but it was fast and tough. "What do we have?" Wu asked, sliding into his captain's chair. Jin's fingers flew over his controls, cleaning up the signal. "Colony ship, sir. Complete engine failure. They're drifting dead in space." He paused, checking his readings again. 2,000 people aboard, and they've got incoming hostiles. Pirates, from the look of it. Wu frowned at his tactical display. "How many aboard the colony ship?" 2,000 civilians, sir. "But Captain, ... Jin's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "They're Zephyrians." The entire bridge went completely silent. Even the background hum of the ship's engines seemed too quiet. "Down," Every human in the galaxy had heard stories about They were like something out of a fairy tale, a species so peaceful they'd never invented a single weapon. They spent their time healing the sick, creating art, and exploring the mysteries of the universe. Most humans thought they were just legends. Zephyrians, Wu repeated slowly, staring at the data on his screen. I'll be damned. His navigation officer, Lee Hanna, looked up from her controls. Sir, we're 4 hours away at maximum speed, but the tactical display is showing 3 Korthok raider vessels moving toward their position. Those pirates will reach them first. Captain Wu's jaw tightened. He'd seen what Korthok raiders did to peaceful species. They took prisoners, sold them as slaves, destroyed entire communities just for profit. The thought of them getting their hands on 2,000 innocent Zephyrians made his blood boil. Set course for their location, he ordered firmly. Maximum burn. Push the engines. Past red line if you have to. Sir, those are Korthok raiders. 3 ships against our 1. Wu smiled grimly. Then we'd better get there first, and even the odds. Dr. Yuhan took a deep breath as the airlock doors opened between the 2 ships. She'd been a military doctor for 8 years, but this was her first time meeting an alien species. Behind her, 3 other medics carried emergency medical supplies and portable equipment. The moment she stepped into the Zephyrian ship, Yu gasped. The corridors weren't made of metal like human ships. Instead, everything was smooth, translucent crystal that seemed to glow with soft, warm light. The walls hummed with gentle musical tones that felt like being inside a giant wind chime. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. But what took her breath away were the Zephyrians themselves. They looked like living sculptures made of colored glass. Their skins shimmered with rainbow patterns that shifted and flowed like water. When they moved, tiny sparkles of light followed them like fairy dust. You had to blink several times to make sure she wasn't dreaming. Captain Velanara approached them slowly, her large bright eyes filled with amazement. When she spoke, her voice came through a small translation device that turned her musical language into words you could understand. You actually came, Velanara said, and you could hear the wonder in her voice. We had heard terrible stories about the Terrans. They said you were monsters from Deathworlds, creatures of violence and war. But you answered our call for help. You smiled gently and kept her movements slow and calm. She noticed how the Zephyrians jumped at every sudden sound, how they seemed afraid when the humans moved too quickly. We're here to help, she said softly. May we examine your injured? As her medical team spread out through the ship, you began to understand something incredible. These aliens had no words in their language for weapon, or enemy, or attack. When her team used medical scanners, the Zephyrians were fascinated, but confused. They kept asking why the humans needed tools that could see inside bodies, because Zephyrian doctors could simply touch someone and feel their injuries. You watched a Zephyrian child show her medic, Corporal Kim Jun, how they healed small cuts by humming and placing their glowing hands over the wound. The cut disappeared completely. These beings were living miracles. Her communicator suddenly crackled to life. Doc, this is Captain Wu. Hostiles are inbound. 3 Korthok raider ships. We need those engines working in 4 hours, or we're all dead. You looked around at the innocent, beautiful creatures surrounding her. They had no idea what was coming. No concept of the evil that wanted to capture and sell them. Understood, Captain, she replied firmly. Then she looked at the frightened aliens around her. We won't let anything happen to you, I promise. Chief Engineer Tae Kim squeezed his broad shoulders through another narrow crystal tunnel inside the Zephyrian engine room. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he cursed under his breath. After 15 years fixing human starship engines, he thought, he'd seen everything. He was wrong. The Zephyrian engines were like nothing he'd ever imagined. Instead of metal and wires, everything was made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. The power flowed through the crystals like blood through veins. It was beautiful, elegant, and completely alien. It was also incredibly fragile. These engines are built for a peaceful universe, Tay muttered, carefully examining a cracked crystal core. They never expected someone to shoot at them. He activated his communicator. Captain, I've found the problem. The main power crystals are shattered. The good news is I can fix them. The bad news is, it's going to take at least 3 hours, maybe 4. On the bridge of the Iron Will, Captain. Wu stared at his tactical display with growing concern. 3 red dots moved steadily toward them through space. Each dot represented a Korthok raider ship, and each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a small planet. What do we know about these pirates? Wu asked. His weapons officer, Bo Chen, pulled up files on his screen. The Korthok Syndicate, sir. They specialize in hitting peaceful colonies. They take prisoners alive and sell them as slaves to mining operations in the Outer Rim. Intelligence reports say they've destroyed over 30 settlements in the past 2 years. Wu's hands tightened into fists. He'd seen the aftermath of Korthok raids before. The empty colonies, the families torn apart, the survivors who never recovered from what they'd experienced. Suddenly, Bo's console lit up with an incoming transmission. Sir, the lead raider is broadcasting a message. Put it on speaker. A harsh, guttural voice filled the bridge, speaking. Broken Universal Standard. Human vessel, you are in Korthok hunting territory. The crystal beings belong to us now. Leave immediately, or face destruction. This is your only warning. The Zephyrians on the bridge, who had been watching the humans work with fascination, suddenly shrank back in terror. But you noticed something strange. They weren't just afraid of the pirates. They seemed equally frightened by the deadly calm expression on Captain Wu's face. Signal all stations, Wu said quietly, his voice cold as space itself. Combat alert. Battle stations. These people asked for our help, and by God, they're going to get it. The human crew moved with practiced efficiency, but the Zephyrians had never seen anything like it. To them, the humans suddenly looked less like rescuers and more like the apex predators they truly were. Sergeant Jun Li knelt on the floor of the Iron Will's cargo bay, carefully cleaning his plasma rifle, while a group of Zephyrians watched from a safe distance. His 12 Marines were doing the same thing, checking their weapons, testing their armor systems, and preparing for battle. The aliens had never seen anything like it. The Zephyrians whispered to each other in their musical language, their crystalline faces showing a mixture of horror and fascination. One young Zephyrian, barely more than a child, finally gathered enough courage to approach Jen. Why do you carry instruments of death? The young alien asked through the translator, his voice trembling with confusion. Jun looked up from his rifle and smiled gently. He gestured toward the massive colony ship visible through the cargo bay windows. To protect instruments of life, he replied simply. The young Zephyrian tilted his head, trying to understand. Jun stood up and activated his rifle's safety systems, making sure it couldn't fire. Then he showed the alien how the weapon worked, not to frighten, but to educate. My people come from a dangerous world, Jun explained. Everything on our planet tried to kill us. Poisonous plants, deadly animals, violent storms. We learned to fight back, or we would have died out long ago. But we don't fight because we enjoy it. We fight to protect things that are beautiful and good. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Captain Wu was transforming his ship from a simple patrol vessel into something much more dangerous. His fingers moved across control panels with practiced ease. Activating combat systems, he announced, all crew to battle stations. The Zephyrians on the bridge watched in amazement and terror as the human ship came alive around them. Hidden panels slid open to reveal gun turrets that emerged like deadly flowers blooming. Torpedo tubes loaded with a mechanical grinding sound that made the aliens flinch. Shield generators began humming with power that made the air itself vibrate. Point. Defense systems online, reported Bo Chen from his weapons station. Engine power redirected to combat configuration, called out Lee Hanna from navigation. All Marine squads ready for boarding action if needed. Came Chin's voice over the intercom. One by one, every station on the ship reported ready for battle. The Zephyrians watched the humans work, and finally began to understand something important. These weren't just any aliens who had answered their distress call. These were apex predators from a Deathworld beings, who had evolved to survive anything the universe could throw at them. But they had also answered a plea for help from complete strangers. The Zephyrians realized that humans were both the most dangerous and most protective species they had ever encountered. The first Korthok raider ship came in fast and aggressive, just like Captain Wu expected. These pirates were used to easy targets, peaceful colonies that couldn't fight back. They had no idea what they were dealing with. Incoming plasma cannon fire, Bo Chen announced from his weapons station, his voice steady despite the danger. The bright green energy beams lit up space around them, but Captain Wu was ready. Evasive maneuvers, roll beneath their firing arc. The iron will twisted and spun like a dancer, sliding under the enemy fire with impossible grace. The Zephyrians, watching from the bridge, grabbed onto anything they could find, their crystalline faces glowing with fear and amazement. They had never seen anything move like this. Now we show them what happens when you threaten innocent people, Wu said quietly. Railgun batteries, target their weapon systems only. I want them disabled, not destroyed. The human weapons fired with deadly precision. Instead of the wild energy beams the pirates used, the railguns sent solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds. Each shot hit exactly where Bo Chen aimed it. Within seconds, the first raiders' guns went completely silent. Direct hits on all targets, Captain Bo Chen reported with satisfaction. Their weapons are offline, but the second Korthok ship was trying a different approach. Instead of engaging the human warship, it was heading straight for the helpless Zephyrian colony vessel. Second vessel attempting to ram the colony ship, Bo Chen called out urgently. Captain Wu's jaw tightened. These pirates would rather destroy the Zephyrians than let them escape. Torpedo spread, full salvo. Stop them now. 4 torpedoes streaked through space like angry hornets. The Zephyrians watched in awe as the human weapons tracked their target with perfect accuracy. The explosions lit up the darkness, and the second raider tumbled away from the colony ship. Its engines dead and its hull cracked, but still intact. Beautiful shooting, Wu said with grim satisfaction. Lieutenant Jin Park looked up from his communications console. Captain, the third vessel is turning away. They're trying to flee. Wu considered his options. He could easily destroy the fleeing ship, but that wasn't what this was about. Let them go, he decided. Word needs to spread throughout the galaxy that Zephyrians are under human protection now. The Zephyrians aboard both ships stared in wonder at what they had just witnessed. The humans had fought with incredible skill and power, but they had shown mercy when they could have shown destruction. These Deathworlders were unlike anything they had imagined. Just when Captain Wu thought the battle was over, his worst nightmare came true. The largest Korthok vessel, badly damaged, but still dangerous, made one final desperate move. Instead of retreating, it launched 3 small boarding pods directly at the Zephyrian colony ship. Captain Bo Chen shouted from his weapons station. Boarding pods inbound. They're going to breach the civilian vessel. Wu's blood ran cold. He couldn't fire on the pods without risking damage to the Zephyrian ship. The pirates had planned this perfectly, a last-ditch effort to grab as many slaves as possible before escaping. Sergeant Jun, we have hostile boarders on the civilian vessel, Wu announced over the ship's intercom. They're going after innocent people. In the cargo bay, Sergeant Jun Lee was already moving before the captain finished speaking. Roger that, sir. All Marines, gear up. We're going over there now. 12 human soldiers grabbed their weapons and equipment, moving with the speed and efficiency that came from years of training. They launched themselves through the connecting tunnel between the ships, their boots clanging against the metal as they ran. The moment Chen's team entered the crystal corridors of the Zephyrian ship, they could hear the screaming. The Kortha raiders had broken through the outer hall and were terrorizing civilians, grabbing anyone they could find. The aliens' musical voices were filled with pure terror. "Spread out," Jen ordered. "Protect the civilians. Non-lethal force when possible." The Korthok pirates expected to find helpless, peaceful aliens hiding in corners. Instead, they found themselves facing human marines, soldiers from a death world, where survival meant being tougher, faster, and more dangerous than everything else on the planet. The Zephyrians watched in amazement as the human soldiers moved through their ship like deadly ghosts. Chen's team flowed around corners, communicated with hand signals, and struck with precision that seemed almost supernatural. When a Korthok raider raised his weapon toward a Zephyrian child, Marine Kim Dong threw himself between them, taking an energy blast in his shoulder to protect the innocent. The fight was brutal but short. The human soldiers used stun weapons when they could, physical force when they had to. They didn't kill unless there was absolutely no choice. Even in the heat of combat, they remembered that their job was to protect, not to destroy. Within 20 minutes, all the Korthok raiders were unconscious and secured. Several human marines were wounded, but every single Zephyrian civilian was safe and alive. Dr. Yuhan moved quickly through the Zephyrian medical bay, her hands steady despite the exhaustion weighing on her shoulders. The crystal walls around her pulsed with soft healing light, and the air itself seemed to hum with energy that helped wounds close faster. It was unlike any medical facility she'd ever worked in. On one bed lay Marine Kim Dong, his shoulder bandaged where he'd taken an energy blast meant for a Zephyrian child. On another, a young Zephyrian civilian trembled as you gently treated burns on his arm from where a Korthok weapon had grazed him. Back and forth she moved, treating human and alien alike with the same careful attention. Captain Velinara stood in the doorway, watching with confusion and wonder. Her crystalline features reflected the medical bay's soft glow as she tried to understand what she was seeing. "I don't understand," Velinara said quietly, her musical voice filled with puzzlement. "You humans are capable of such terrible violence. I watched your soldiers fight with deadly precision. Yet here you are, risking everything for complete strangers. You could have died protecting us. Why, Doctor?" You looked up from bandaging Kim's arm, her hands never stopping their gentle work. "Violence and compassion aren't opposites," she replied thoughtfully. "Sometimes you need one to protect the other. We fight because we love, not because we hate." Velinara watched as you moved to check on a Zephyrian elder, her touch as gentle with the alien as it had been with her own soldier. "Your species confuses me. You are predators, but you heal. You are warriors, but you sacrifice yourselves for others. Maybe that's what makes us human," you said with a tired smile. Meanwhile, on the bridge, other Zephyrians were trying to express their gratitude in the only way they knew how. Captain Velinara's second-in-command approached Captain Wu, carrying a container filled with the most precious thing their people possessed: pure energy crystals that could power entire cities. "Please," the alien said, his voice shaking with emotion, "take these. They are worth enough to buy a fleet of warships. It is all we have to offer." Captain Wu looked at the priceless crystals, then gently pushed the container back toward the alien. "We don't want payment," he said firmly. "We just want to know that you're safe." The Zephyrians stared in complete amazement. These terrifying Deathworlders, who could destroy planets, asked for nothing in return for saving 2,000 lives. They wanted only friendship. 3 days later, the Iron Will flew alongside the repaired Peaceful Dawn as both ships headed toward Zephyr space. Chief Engineer Tae Kim had worked miracles with the alien crystal technology. and the colony ship's engines now hummed with their original musical harmony. But something much bigger was happening across the galaxy. Lieutenant Jin Park sat at his communications station, staring at his screen in disbelief. "Captain," he called out, his voice filled with amazement. "You need to see this. We're receiving transmission requests from everywhere. Dozens of them." Captain Wu walked over to look at the display. Species names scrolled past that he'd only heard about in academy classes: the Melodic Collective, the Crystal Gardens Alliance, the Harmony Worlds, the Peaceful Unity, and many others. All of them wanted to know about the humans who answered. "They're all asking the same questions," Jin continued. "They want to know if the stories are true. Did humans really risk their lives for strangers? Did we really ask for nothing in return?" On the main view screen, Captain Velanara appeared from the bridge of her colony ship. Her crystalline features glowed with gratitude as she prepared to send her final message to her people and beyond. "My fellow beings of peace," she began, her musical voice carrying across subspace to every peaceful civilization in the galaxy. "We sent out a distress call, expecting no one would come. Pirates were closing in to take us as slaves. We thought we were going to die." She paused, looking directly at Captain Wu through the screen. The humans answered. These Deathworlders, these apex predators from a world of violence, came to save complete strangers. They fought 3 pirate ships to protect us. Their soldiers took wounds meant for our children. Their doctors healed our people with the same care they showed their own. Her voice grew stronger, and when we tried to pay them with our most precious treasures, they refused. They asked for nothing except our friendship. The Deathworlders are not what we feared, they are what we needed. Back on Earth, Fleet Command was already responding. New orders went out to human ships across the galaxy, patrol assignments in peaceful sectors, protection details for civilian convoys, rapid response teams for distress calls. Captain Wu looked out at the stars and realized everything had changed. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not as conquerors, but as guardians. The most dangerous species in known space had become the protectors of the most peaceful ones. The age of human protectorship had begun.